competition to WhatsApp in India, with about 100 million downloads, and explore what makes Hike what is it today. Kavin will answer the questions such as what are the major technology and social changes you've seen over the last few years? What are the largest setback or challenges you faced, and how did you find your way out of it? How do you see AR, VR, machine learning evolving and shaping how products are built? Any pointers you would like to share at this platform for all those who are building tech products for India, you're most welcome. So here we have a fireside chat with Kavin Bharti Mittal and Arun Seth, who's the member NASSCOM Product Council. A brief introduction on Arun. Mr. Arun Seth is the non-executive chairman of India operations at Alcatel-Lucent India since May 2011. He's worked for BT Group in India in a variety of positions over 17 years, retiring July 2012 as a non-executive chairman. He's been on the executive committee for NASSCOM for the last 8 years, driving a number of programs. Very interested in entrepreneurship, he's a charter member of TiE Delhi and on the advisory board for National Entrepreneurship Network, and has been part of angel funds and mentors and invest in a number of startups in the technology space. Here we welcome an alumni of IIT Kanpur and IIM Calcutta. He's worked in senior commercial positions in the UB Group, HCL, etc. We welcome you, Kavin Bharti Mittal and Arun Seth. A big round of applause. Thank you.
This is working? Yeah. Morning, everybody. After that crazy introduction, I don't know what else to say. But it's something that, I've been involved with NASSCOM for quite some time, and this continuing on a tradition of trying to bring value to all you investors, all you product startups, people who are wanting to be product startup companies. I presume there's a good mix of people out here. But I'm really glad that Kavin agreed to be here for this session. Yeah, and I had a long relationship with his family. As BT, we were the first investors in Airtel in '95, and I try and ask people how big was Airtel at that time. When we got in, it was 20,000 subscribers. Wow. Now we probably do that in 1 second. It's missing here. I've been involved with Kavin for some years. We've invested together in some companies, and he's taken what I'd call a difficult path. The easiest path for you, Kavin, was to have joined Airtel, like some people have just done. So not Airtel, but other companies. Yeah. So, but he's always been he hates it when I say this, but I say that I saw the same thing when his dad, like, we wanted to go down an untrodden path. So he picked up a very hard one, which was building a product when products were not so fashionable out here with Hike. And I'm here to talk much about what I do, but more important is to understand from Kavin what his journey has been, what he's done well, very important what you've not done, because there's a lot of learnings for everybody in what doesn't work. Because in this startup world, you got to keep trying, pivot, and move on. So, Kavin, tell me, how did you get into this idea of getting into a product like Hike? Is this your first product, or is this something that you evolved, or is this part of some trend?
It's a great question. So, can you guys hear me? No? I had a feeling. What about now? Yeah? Okay, great. So Hike actually is the second or third product that I've actually built in the last 10 years now. But the idea behind Hike was very straightforward. I had moved back to Delhi in 2011, and I was in CP, in Connaught Place in Delhi, not too far from here. And I was with some friends, and we were just behind the Haldirams having some chaat and golgappas, and something interesting struck me that day. The people who were serving sort of those food orders In between them serving their food orders, they had one thing keeping them busy, and it was a Nokia 1100 feature phone. And the 1100 feature phone was the phone that actually brought India on the telecom revolution. It was, I think, 2,000 rupees price. Had a flashlight. It was called the trucker phone. Couldn't do much on it. You could make calls, barely SMSs. And given that I had just moved back from the UK, I had an iPhone 4S in my pocket. And the iPhone 4S, even back then, was a supercomputer in your pocket compared to a Nokia 1100 phone. And even though there was no 3G in India, there was Edge. We were linked very deeply to the internet. I had mails, I had maps, I had pretty much everything on my phone. And it just dawned upon me that there's a billion people in this country like this that actually have no idea and no clue what the internet is. And it begged the question, which was, how these guys come online? And it took me back to my first time experience on the internet. And I had a packet bell PC, 166 megahertz, I think 128K RAM. I had a dial-up modem, 56K. And someone gave me a Netscape CD, which they installed on my computer. And you would go through the terminal window and sort of sign into dial-up, and the only thing you actually had was yahoo.com. And that was my first experience on the internet, like most people actually in this room as well. But these guys would not have that. And the big question was, how would they come online? And it became quite clear that something not too expensive and something that was easily understood would be the way people came on to the internet in India, in a market where you have a billion people coming online for the first time in their lives on a mobile device. And so the idea was messaging will play a role. Messaging would simplify the internet, change the way people interact with content and services in a mobile-first market like India. That was the idea. And fast forward about 4 years and 2-3 months, we can see that vision coming to life. That's how it all started.
Thank you. I've done a bit of reading, and hear everything. Most of my reading comes from my children. I'm at an age where I'm not supposed to know what you guys are doing. But more important is what we hear is that messaging is good because there is a huge clutter of apps. I'm sure everybody has so many apps in their phones, and certainly apps, phones which are, let's say, the smartphones at 3,000, 4,000 rupees. You can't add more than 3-4 apps.
Yeah.
So how do you get to the thing is, and which is the reason why I suspect Mark Zuckerberg bought WhatsApp for 19 billion. Everybody thought he was crazy, but he was right. So is messaging going to be the killer app in some sense, that which everybody will do everything through that? Or
that's our bet, of course. That was the idea, but I think messaging comes in two forms. One is your simple SMS replacement, and one is sort of messaging as a platform. And you can see that each market has 2 or 3 of these apps that are pretty popular. China has QQ. A lot of folks don't know QQ. Actually, it's much bigger than WeChat in China.
Is it?
It's the platform. WeChat is supposed to be the simpler application, by the way. So WeChat is a simpler application. QQ is the big messaging platform. And in the US, you have, I think, Messenger, you have Snapchat, and I think iMessage. In Europe, you have WhatsApp and Snapchat. And I think in India, you have now WhatsApp and Hike. So you always see a market having 2 kinds of messaging apps. One that is simple SMS replacement, and one that does much more than simple messaging. And in a world where you have a billion people coming online for the first time in their lives on a mobile device, with phones that are not too expensive, that are less than $200, which means they can't handle more than 6-7 apps on the phones, you need a new interaction model that's a lot simpler. And along the way, we learned to articulate what this shift is. Like, we've been through what we call 2 computing eras. We've seen the desktop era, and now we've seen the smartphone era. And in each era, you have what we call the pre-internet phase and the post-internet phase that defines how you interact and consume with content and services. So in the desktop or the PC era, the pre-internet phase, the only way to interact with the software or service was CD. That was the only way. And when the internet became cheaper,
from the floppy drive area.
So am I, by the way. I very fondly remember those days, and then the internet came, dial-up became cheaper, and the browser took off. And the browser was very easy. You didn't need a CD, you didn't need a floppy for every single thing you did. One more CD became, simply speaking, one more tab in the browser. Consumers loved it because you can try before you buy. There was no need to buy a CD. And developers love it because you can push code 24/7 and make changes all the time. And I feel like in mobile today, we're in the midst of the same transition where apps are like CDs, and the question is, what is the next big thing? And our guess is that like a CD became a tab in the browser, one app becomes one more contact in the address book. And now the world over, you can see this paradigm happening with companies in the West, in the East, and so on and so forth. So we really believe that.
Very good, very good. But you mentioned one thing about India being a little different in terms of the internet. That our internet is is there, but it's sometimes slow, sometimes patchy, sometimes it's not there. So I was just speaking to some friends who are sitting right here. In the West, you just assume the internet is always on. Here, it's not always on. So what we call the offline way. So is there something that is something that Hike will be different from others?
Yeah, no doubt. So the internet market is very different. The app model, even though is tedious, has worked fairly well in most markets globally because you had big smartphones, expensive smartphones, big fat 4G pipes and so on. In India, you're getting there eventually, but the cheap smartphones, for example, compound this problem in a big way. So you have to build your services in a fashion where not only are they lightweight and sort of easy to use, but they sort of are very local in terms of how people consume content and services in the country. A small example is the whole, bots are not debate.
Yeah.
We really don't believe in the bot model. We believe it's tedious. It's what we call linear UI. The bot forces you down a path, whereas a graphical user interface, you can jump back and forth depending on what you see. And the AI is not there. If I were to ask you where you live right now, you can tell me, but if you were to ask a bot that question, it'll say, sorry, come again. So the AI itself is not there, so building bots is very early on. The future, it does have a role in the future. We do what we call micro apps on the platform, which are very different. So a lot of these things are very local to India and how they consume content services. So no doubt, there's a massive opportunity waiting here to build something local. Yeah.
Very good. I've been personally fascinated. I'm trying out some things. People are familiar with Alexa, Google Home, and all these voice things. So I kind of sense that the era is going back where when you're in a house and you call for Ramu to do stuff, here you'll call Alexa or whatever the Indian one is going to be. I'm pretty sure we're not going to see Alexa out. What's your view on voice as a way to demystify technology?
Big, very big.
Yeah.
We believe sight and sound, so voice is a part of it, is the way most people in India will come online. One of the biggest learnings from one of the big sort of failures we had was we had launched local keyboards inside Hike 2 years back to a lot of fanfare. And we really thought it was going to work really well because we'd gotten good feedback from the market and stuff. But we launched it, the uptake was good, but nowhere near the scale we were expecting. Because after Hindi, people don't like using local keyboards because there's no QWERTY standard in local keyboards. Yeah. And it's very, very hard to type in local language because you have the matras and everything else. And people just, prefer taking pictures or speaking in, walkie-talkie. That's pretty much it. So if you can, over time, build tech to understand what people are saying and use that to sort of do things like Alexa and sort of Google Home, it's definitely a big deal. However, will it be in the form factor of an Alexa or Google Home? I don't know. Does the smartphone still win in that battle in a market like India? Most likely so, because people can only afford so many devices in their households. So voice will play a big role, no doubt, and what we call vision and sight. Both of those combined together are very, very powerful. It is the most natural way, as we're doing right now, to communicate with people.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a lesson for a lot of people who are thinking of startup, that you guys are coming into things. So think around building those upfront.
Yeah, I think, today now, 50% of our active base, by the way, is now on 4G. Okay. 50%. That's insane, right? Now, 4G's become better as time's gone on, and the difference in 4G is that you have very big upload pipes and very big download pipes, which means that sending photos, videos back on the network has become a lot easier and actually cheaper. So when we're thinking about building something in India, India has a weird internet market. We have 200 million people on the internet, out of which only 100 million people are really good internet users. We believe consumer tech disruption happens top down. So you have to start from the top of the market and then sort of build downwards in the market. So when anyone's building for this market in India, now you focus on the top of the pyramid, which is now 4G enabled. 4G, but we have cheap smartphones, but still 4G. And that's a game changer in this market.
And we think it will change because I happen to sit on one phone company board, and I know exactly what we're doing. We're just going only 4G and scrapping a lot of stuff. Going back, because 4G is going to be the way. So guys, just build for that, is the simple message there. The big thing now comes is monetization. I don't think you charge anybody anything.
We don't plan to forever.
Forever. That's an interesting model. I'm not sure how many guys can think of that. But do you believe, most people try and monetize apps through advertising, which is pesky and irritant. So what do people do at the end of it? You have the best investors with you. You have Foxconn, you have Tencent, you have SoftBank, you have Bharti. But everybody won't have that. So what is a monetization model which doesn't irritate customers? If there is one.
It's
If there is one.
no, it's a great question. It should be talked about. Our goal is the reason we are very clear that our business model will kick in 3-4 years from now is because we believe in the social space you need very heavy engagement first. And in the social space, unlike commerce and unlike the taxi space, you can keep your burn very low. Your capex and opex is not very high because you're not investing in warehousing, logistics, taxis, and heavy discounts. You can actually keep your burn low. So when you raise a lot of money, you have a longer runway to invest in building the product and over time figuring out the business model. So that's what we've done. But business models globally come down to two first principle sort of ways of thinking. One is consumers transact with merchants, and the second one is merchants will sponsor to consumers. You can break down every single business model in the world across any industry into these two forms. Each app or service has to figure out which one works for them better. And a lot of that has to do with macroeconomic conditions inside the country. For example, Tencent has gone from $100 million in top line revenue when they IPO'd about 10 years ago to $20 billion of top line in 10 to 12 years. That's because the economy grew tremendously and people actually had a lot more disposable income to transact with games and stickers online. For us to go build a very large transactional business model in the digital economy, India's economy has to grow as well. But there's also $4 to 5, maybe $6 billion of brand advertising happening in this country, which again is a large sort of market tap into. So you got to figure out what works for you, and depending on where the market is right now, I think it's as straightforward as that. And I think in the internet space, if you're in commerce or a transactional space, no doubt you have to start showing revenue and transactional profits from day one. And if there's a longer-term strategy, you invest behind discounting and so on and so forth. But there are other industries where you don't have to charge up front. And there you can take a very different approach. So it really depends on which industry you're actually working in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question which I think would interest the audience is this issue about funding drying up. You keep reading a lot about it. I mean, still people raise a lot of money. You raised money recently. A lot of people are raising up. So what's your thought to people in this room about this? You hear of Flipkart value going from 15 billion to 5 or whatever it could be. But and unfortunately in the go-go days, every single entrepreneur was focused only on valuation, not necessarily about business.
Yep.
So what is your thoughts to this audience who clearly will require money and there are sessions out here?
Yeah, of course. I think that's an important part of building a company. There's no doubt. But honestly, and if I'm being completely honest, one of the biggest problems that I see in the startup space in India is that a lot of people are driven by social signals. I think startups become sexy. It's become cool. So a lot of people are out there trying to build startups just to look cool and look good. Actually, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's probably one of the hardest things to do in this internet space. And what ends up happening in sort of those, with those kind of sort of people is that Series A, for example, becomes a milestone. Or Series B becomes a milestone. You think you're successful if you've got a Series A and Series B. And then these people turn to be mentors and so on and so forth without really knowing how to run a business. And it's true. I've come across so many people who are mentoring startups at a Series A round, and I don't get it. I don't have the time to do anything myself. So I think it's just important to figure out the core of the product and keep at it 24/7. And fortunately, in the internet space, you don't need much capital to start. There was a 4 or 5% team building the first version of Hike. You do not need much capital to start. And if you're doing really well, if your growth is there, capital is available. You can see that in the market today. One of the investors calls it like a dumbbell strategy. There is money available for people doing well early stage. There's money available for people doing really well late stage. The guys in the middle, there's no money for them.
True.
And it's true. So at the early stage, you just focus heavily on the product and figure out what's local for this market. And there's so many opportunities, it's not even funny.
No, I remember, Subinder, you may remember, in Infinity we did 20 plus investments. There are only 3 live right now. in 20 years, only 3 exist out of the 20 plus, whatever it was. So that's probably the right rule. So you got to get at it, and but I think the simple message is that focus on your product. The valuation will come later.
Yeah, and find something 2-3 years ahead that's going to come. Because if you get into we almost made this mistake, by the way, which was we jumped into battle with like these big behemoths without really knowing what we were doing. Luckily, early on, we were very clear that in a market like India, the messaging as a platform game is very, very different. It's a whole different box altogether. So actually, if you look at our numbers, we actually don't compete with a WhatsApp or a Facebook Messenger. So it's very important to find your niche so you actually have the time, because Arun, what happens is you grow a lot as a team, as a person, as a founder in this journey. And if you're up against people who are already doing what they're doing globally, who spend 7-10 years honing what they do, it's very hard to go up against them. Which brings us to the next topic of what's happening in the capital space and so on and so forth. It's very tough to go up against people who've been honing their skill set for 7, 8, 10 years that actually have very profitable businesses outside who come and invest back in India. So you have to find that niche. That becomes very important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
One of the issues, because I want to leave some time for Devika, how much time do we have? Another 10 minutes? So another couple of questions and then we'll open the thing. One of the big topics which I think people would be interested in is this issue where some of our Indian founders have made this noise that you shouldn't allow foreign funds and all or foreign companies, foreign capital to come in. Wait, what's your take? Wait. Because at the end, I know you're going to go out and go to other markets. You're never going to remain in India, that I know.
So this discussion, this is the anti-dumping thing you're talking about, right? Yeah. This discussion, first of all, has to happen. It has to happen between industry and the government as soon as possible. And Arun, it's not unusual for free, economies like India and even the US actually have anti-dumping measures in place.
I agree with you.
Look at the steel industry. And what the government's done for the steel industry, not only in India, but the US as well. Just in 2015, 4 or 5 companies came together and said, the guys in China are dumping here, please give us some sort of leeway. And they did.
Yeah.
And the other measures of sort of protecting the local industry is regulation. If you look at banking, if you look at telecom, there were very clear, strict frameworks in FDI, giving room for local people to grow. I really believe we have an opportunity in this country to build a $500 billion, if not $1 trillion internet economy, like China and the US. So I reversed the question, which is why shouldn't there be measures to protect the internet economy too? Now, when
China
you ask,
by the way, China is a completely closed economy even today.
China is a whole different ballgame, but the
And
question
US is about to become a closed economy.
Yeah, but the question you have to ask is why shouldn't there be some measures to build a level playing field in India?
Yeah.
And Arun, there is no good answer to that question. There is no good answer. Because it's been done multiple times globally in the US and India too. Why is the internet space any different? So that discussion has to happen. I would hate to see the Indian economy have an internet economy like Europe. They have a tiny $50 billion internet economy compared to $1 trillion in China. Yeah. We can't be that. We can't be that. So something has to happen to ensure that we have a level playing field for local companies in this market.
I think NASSCOM, Devika, you guys should, and we all should take this up very strongly with the government on this one. I mean, the last question really to you is that, the Prime Minister has got this big vision of Startup India. A year has just gone past. And strangely, we found only 3 companies have got funded under that program in a year. Is there some thoughts which you can, NASSCOM can take back? And then after this, I'll open up.
I think, first of all, the initiative was fantastic. You've not seen this happen globally anywhere. And when you do something new, especially when government does something like this, it's new. It's different. My guess is it takes time to figure out what to do. Investing is a VC job. It's an investor sort of a job. It's not what sort of the government actually does. So my guess is it'll take some time. But I think pressure should be on the government to figure out sort of the best way to go and sort of handle all the funds that we're trying to allocate to the ecosystem. And maybe have more specifics on what sectors we want to spin up. For example, I really believe that 3 humongous sectors in India that are completely ripe for disruption are microfinance, which is very important for us to help grow the economy, healthcare, and education.
Yeah.
Humongous opportunities and so needed in a country like India, because the worry is that you have 1 billion people. Fast forward 5-10 years, you do not want to have unhealthy, unskilled people in this country. So I think there has to be a more narrow focus on a few sectors in India that will actually drive the economy forward too. And if we had that from the government, that'd be fantastic.
Great. So I think Thank you so much for this one, but we'd like to open the house for questions. Please raise your hand, your name, ask a question. Mics should be around. Come on, guys. Subhinder, you got to start the
A very quiet audience today.
very quiet audience.
There you go. Yeah.
Kavin, hi. My name is Abhinav Mahapatra. I'm from Tech Scene Singapore. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about the Snap IPO? I mean, what is the kind of direction that Indian tech startups would be taking looking at something like that?
Is there a specific question?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to know your thoughts.
I think Snap's again one of those exceptional companies that has come through, sort of from nowhere to be sort of who they are. And what's exciting for folks like us when we're looking at an IPO like Snap is that these companies can actually create a lot of value, in global markets. There is room for niche social players to become very, very big and have big impact on society and actually create a lot of value for the ecosystem. So time will tell. Let's see what happens when the IPO actually comes to the market. I believe it's going to be interesting. It's a brand new product. It's very, very different. It's sort of like what Facebook was like 10 years back. And I think time will tell where it goes.
So they're going in for an IPO after about, say, 6 years of their existence. A lot of people are saying that that's too early for a startup to do such a thing. Do you think that's true, or the discussions?
I think timing is relative. In markets like the US, my guess is you will see companies go IPO slightly faster every year because you have a humongous market that they're targeting globally, which is available and ready. So if you look at Snap's most of the user base, it's Europe and North America. And you have comfortably a couple of 100 million good, very healthy internet users who can be monetized very easily too. When you look at India, however, it's a longer time frame because the economy has to grow, infrastructure has to be deployed. So 6 years would be very, very, I would say, naive in a market like India. That's maybe double that. But in markets like the US, where you have the infrastructure built and the economy that's doing fairly well, and you have disposable income, you can see from the numbers they're making $500 million of revenue already in 6th year. So if you have numbers like that, it's different. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Mittal, I'm Sunny Jain from AS Techno Solutions. We are showcasing a product. We do price comparison. My question is that when is it that we would see Hike doing something like Google, Alu, or various other messengers where you can type in the name of a particular product or type in a location where it can find restaurants near you, or it could find deals of that particular product. I'm sorry, my experience is for those particular products only, so that's why I'm a bit inquisitive about that. That why don't we do something like that? Find restaurant near you or find great deals.
That's a good idea.
Then we can help you.
Soon, you'll see it soon.
Okay, thank you.
There's somebody at the back.
Hi, Gaurang from an app called Bachat. Wanted to know what your take on UPI and USSD attached to chat as well as lending, which I'm assuming, Paytm, MobiKwik, and the rest of them. Would we see payments and credit in Hike at some point?
Yeah, UPI is phenomenal. We love it. I think Nandan and the team done a phenomenal
Absolutely.
job. Like that is literally magical, right? It has made it very easy for anybody to go plug into the banking system of payments now. And so don't be surprised to see us doing that sometime this year. It just makes a lot of sense. For us to go and enable all the stuff that the gentleman talked about, you actually need transactions on the platform. To have transactions on the platform, you need payments. And I really believe the experience of UPI is so simple. It's one click. It's so much better than like the double auth and credit cards and so on and so forth. So actually, it's a very big deal. So we're still thinking about it. We're figuring out what to do, but you will see it in the platform sooner or later, no doubt. Yeah.
Go ahead. At the back.
Hi, I'm Sadhan from Video Cypher. So as you have mentioned that Hike is more than a messaging platform, it is actually a platform where users can do many things. So what other things than text, like say images, documents, videos, you have seen growth, and what you see trends for future?
So one of the biggest things about Hike today is that people share over 300 million stickers per day on the platform. We were also very surprised by the success of stickers because it is a richer data medium, but it allows people to express in their local languages very easily. It removes the need for things like keyboards in the market. So that's a very local thing in India. We have 20,000 stickers across 40 plus languages that talks about sort of how local the app is. 90% of our user base today, 90% of our user base consumes content in the application. We serve news, live cricket scores. We have a channel for jokes and fun facts as well. And we can see that, that vision sort of coming to life where messaging does become the avenue through which people consume content and eventually services. So you're going to see us go down this path in 2017 as well and round off the vision and really make that vision of messaging being the gateway or highway, to life. So, expect to see more of that in 2017.
One last question.
Hi, Kavin. This is
Sorry,
Parth.
we are running out of time.
Hi, my name is Bhanu. I run a company, a small startup called Glossaread. I have a very different question with respect to investors. And I hugely respect, traditionally built companies, big business houses in India like Tata's, Birla's, and families like yours who have, built businesses through very hard days. And I think a lot of us today in the startup community are finding things like easy money. So I have a question. When a few of my investors ask me, and I'm always very perplexed, and I don't have an answer. Say that, hey Bhanu, when will you exit this business? And I'm always dumbfounded really because I don't have answers to these because I never want to exit the business. I never want to. They ask me how much are you willing to dilute. I don't know what that means really because I'm here to solve some sort of a problem and it's taking me a while. So it'll be great to hear your suggestions and guidance on these things.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things you realize sooner or later when you're an entrepreneur building whatever it is, that you have to learn to play the game. You have to learn to build a team. You have to learn to fundraise. And with all these things come, new challenges and new learnings. Specifically with the, raising capital, when you raise capital, you're always going to dilute. That's always going to happen. And the amount you will dilute depends on how much you're raising and what stage of the business you're at right now. And what I've seen a lot of sort of founders do is actually take a lot of capital that they don't need, dilute a little too much more early on. And what happens is two things. One is the return on the investment becomes a lot harder because you've raised too much capital upfront. Second is the dilution is so large that sometimes over time the founders lose interest because their stakes become very small in the company. These are two big traps you must avoid. It's very, very important because ownership is a very core part of being an entrepreneur. I hope that answers your question.
Can I add to something what you said?
Sure.
If you have too much capital, and I've seen many founders there, then there is a need to spend it because your investors behind you to spend it, and you just go foolishly spend it. And that's the start of a downward spiral. So start with less, and you'll actually try more. There's no other way. Great. I think we've run ourselves out of time.
Great. Arun, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kavin.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you
I
very much.
request Subinder to please hand over our token of thanks and appreciation to Arun and Kavin.
Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Great
Thank you.
insights. Thank you.
Yours is coming.
Thanks, Subinder. See you. Come.
We all break for a cup of tea for about 30 minutes, and we are back here
Hey,
by
Sumit,
11.
how are you?
Thank you.
Kavin, meet young Sumit.
Hey,
He's running the startup, 10,000 startup.
how are you?